Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in, much appreciated this morning. And today I'm going to do a little follow-up on the video I did yesterday when I was talking about water clarity, water visibilities in relationship to June fishing. And what I'm going to do today is talk a little bit about water levels in June. Because in my opinion, water levels are critical all year long, but when you're talking specifically about the month of June, early summer, that's when, to me, they play the biggest role as far as in how you need to fish, sort of what the fish are doing. So we're going to cover a little bit of that today. But real quick, just want to remind you guys, tonight's the night. Johnny and I have our virtual seminar on post-spawn fishing, on jig fishing. We're going to cover all the offshore jig fishing techniques and tactics, secrets, all the shallow water ones. I think Johnny said we have 4 openings left. So if you guys want to, join us tonight from 6 to 9 p.m. You can go on fishthemoment.com and sign up for that. See if you can get one of those last 4 places. And if you can't make the seminar, we'll also send a recording of it to you that you can get everything that we were talking about if you're busy doing something else. So much appreciate if you can check that out. So let's talk a little bit about water level in June. Most of the time in the country, when you're dealing with sort of that May, sometimes into June time frame like we are now, you're dealing with a lot of different fluctuating water levels. This is the time of year where a lot of times the ground's saturated, like in May, and it doesn't take a lot of rain to really raise the lakes up a lot. And it's almost like every man-made impoundment. I've never seen one that really wasn't susceptible to this, some more than others. But what you have in here, let's talk a little bit about the fish, movement and sort of their personality the first part of June, like we're getting into it now. Right now when I'm doing this video, it's almost Memorial Day. It's this weekend. So we're in the end of May, starting the first part of June. Water temperatures in a lot of the part of the country right now are, upper 60s to a little bit over 70 degrees, depending upon what part of the country is. And you're dealing with a little bit higher water now. I know, like here in Missouri, for example, most every lake we have in our state is a little bit higher than normal. Like right now, Bull Shoals Lake's 20 foot over normal. Table Rock Lake's 3 or 4 foot over normal. Stockton Lake 6 or 7 feet over normal. So we got high water to deal with. What this does, when you have high water in June, the water levels, it actually creates 2 different populations of fish that traditionally are just one. When these fish start to get in the post-spawn pattern, when those water temperatures, and we talked about this a few videos back, when that water temperature starts to get 70 degrees right off in the bat in the morning, a lot of the fish are done spawning. Some are still are. And here's another thing about spawning fish, guys. Bass spawn all summer. I don't know if a lot of people realize that, but they may not, a lot of them spawn all summer. There'll be some bass spawning all summer. I don't care where you're at in the country, because it takes, for example, like I was out fishing a couple weeks ago and I caught like a 5-inch bass. There's no way that bass is just a year old from spawning last spring, and there's no way it spawned this year. That bass had to spawn out sometime late last summer to only be 5 inches long. So when we're talking about fish movement and behavior, you got to realize that bass are all over the board, any time of the year. But specifically, the 2 different populations I want to talk about concerning water level in June are those fish that are post-spawn fish wanting to move deeper, and those fish that are shallow, that are staying shallow, that want to take advantage of any high water conditions that are abnormal to the lake. So here's what you have in the most situation. In most situations, when the water level is a little bit high in June, I think that you've got probably 30 to 40% of the fish that move into that shallow flooded cover or stay up shallow on the bank, and they just don't want to go out deeper. And then you've got 50% of the bass in the lake that are ready to move out deeper. They're starting to move out to those early summer areas, secondary points, main points, river channel edges, creek channel intersections, that type of stuff. And then you have another 10% of the bass. Did you wake up this morning?
Yep.
You did? You just get out of bed?
Yep.
Okay. I think Elijah just got out of bed. So you got this 10% of the bass population that are just all over the board. But specifically, those two populations I want to talk about are what these flooded cover fish do and what the deeper fish do. One thing you're going to find out when you have higher water levels in June, a lot of the times, even though you may have 30 to 40% of the bass using that shallow water cover, they tend to be smaller fish for the most part. I'm not talking about little fish, but they tend to be a little bit smaller fish. You may catch an occasional good one, but a lot of the times you're dealing with just keepers or above keepers or non-keepers. For whatever reason, there's some bass that want to use that cover, but the bigger bass, you're going to find out, regardless of the water level, I don't care if the water level is 10 foot high, or I don't care if it's normal or if it's low, the majority of the quality bass in the lake, the 3 pound plus bass, are going to be out in that deeper water. I don't care if the water level is 20 foot high like it is in Bull Shoals right now, or if it's 3-4 foot high like it is at Table Rock. You're going to have 50% of those bass that are moving out to those post-spawn structures. Again, the points, ledges, drops, hard structured breaks, that type of stuff. That's just where they're most comfortable at. If you have a normal range of water visibility, if that water visibility is in that 2+ foot zone like that. Problem you have with that is a lot of times when those fish move out to that type of area, you get your shoes on?
Yeah.
Okay. The problem you have with that is when those fish move out to that deeper structure like there, it's a little bit more hit and miss. I mean, they tend to school up a little bit more. The bigger fish tend to school up more. This is the time of year you catch those big bags of fish deep cranking. So if you can get on those fish, regardless of the water level, you can do well. But the shallow fish, even though they may be a little bit on the smaller side, they tend to be a little bit more consistent. You normally can get a lot of bites up shallow if the water level is a little bit higher, whether it be flipping, swim jig, top water, whatever, that type of thing. So, and again, that's on higher water levels. Now, on normal water levels or lower water levels in June, it's sort of the same thing. What's the matter?
Dad, can you help me get my shoes on?
Okay, I'll be right back, guys. I'm gonna help Elijah get his shoes on. Okay, I'm back. Okay, under normal water level conditions or low water level conditions, you sort of have the same thing. You still have that percentage, that 25 to 30% of the fish that want to stay shallow, and then you have those 50% of the fish that are ready to move deeper. The only difference is the technique changes on different water levels. While you may be fishing flipping spinnerbait, top waters and stuff like that in flooded conditions, under normal conditions this time of year when those fish are shallow, you're fishing more like flukes, some type of floating worm, sometimes wacky rig, some type of a thing. Okay, sorry, I'll be back again, guys. Elijah's having another problem. Okay, we got Elijah squared away, and you guys that are watching the video, he comes out here all the time, and I'll probably, he gets older, I'm gonna probably look back and miss him coming out and interrupting me on these videos. So anyway, he's out playing in the yard now. So anyway, back to normal water and lower water level techniques and conditions. Basically, you've got a lot of the fish doing the same thing, regardless of the water level, except the techniques are the ones that change. And again, under lower water conditions, lower level conditions in June, the first part of June this time of year, you still have a lot of those fish that can be caught on swim jigs, some top water, some flukes, shallow running crankbaits, a variety of conditions based upon, whatever cover you have available. And the offshore techniques are pretty much the same. It's all the deep cranking, Carolina rig jig, football head jig, swim baits, big hair jigs. One thing I will tell you guys, and we'll talk about later, is when I'm talking about June offshore fishing, I'm thinking deep crankbaits. Deep crankbaits have a window that they work for those bigger fish, regardless of the water level in June. It's just a great bait to throw in June. Normally those bigger fish will get triggered and they're positioned to be caught on deep cranks better than any other time of the year. So anyway, that's just a quick, deal I wanted to cover on water level. Here's to reiterate what I'm talking about. It's almost like you can. The fish are going to do the same thing regardless of the water level. You're still going to have the segment of those fish stay shallow. You're going to have a segment of those fish move deeper. It doesn't matter what the water level does. If you guys have got flooded conditions or higher water conditions in June in your lake, and you want to get bit for numbers, take advantage of that shallow bite. And the shallow bite can even be better than the deep water bite if you've got really dirty water, if you've got really off-colored water in the lake you're fishing. But under normal conditions, all those lakes, like, you know, I don't care if it's the lakes in Missouri here, I don't care if it's a lake like Lake Eufaula in Alabama, if that water level's high in June, you're still going to have those bigger fish out deeper. And I can think about so many tournaments that I fished over the years in late May and June where I rolled into these tournaments seeing 5 or 6 foot of water in the bushes, thinking I was going to whack them, and I wound up just getting hammered by guys that were fishing out offshore, even though that water level is higher. And before, we didn't know about that. Back, 30 years ago, something like that, when the water level got high, nobody thought about fishing out deep. Everybody just put that flipping stick in their hand, and that's why Denny Brower won so many tournaments back in the early 90s and 80s, is because that's just what everybody did. And it wasn't until David Fritz started catching them out off the bank in the mid-90s when the water was high that people realized that these bass move deep regardless of what the water level is. So it's just another thing we learn about bass behavior. We're constantly learning about it, and one of the things that I'll reiterate, guys, here as far as bass movement, bass behavior, is there's no lake in the country where all the bass are doing the same thing at the same time. There's always bass doing everything. And I'll go back to here in Missouri real quick. Like all of our lakes around here right now, even though it's almost the 1st of June, I can promise you there's bass that have not spawned. There's bass on the beds. There's bass on the post spawn. There's bass that are going to spawn in July and August. There's bass that probably spawn the last part of March. They're all over the place, and that's what makes bass fishing, again, I always say, one of the toughest sports in the world, is because, you're dealing with a creature out there that is unpredictable. It really is. I mean, we think sometimes that we can, predict their behavior, but ultimately we can't. So anyway, just a quick little tip this morning on water levels. I'm going to talk tomorrow or later today probably about water temperature, and then that will cover the 3 variables that I use to basically find fish all over the country, which would be water temperature, water level, and just the water clarity that you have in the lake. So I hope you guys have a good day. We'll see y'all later.